Hi everyone, it's Mari here for Honeybee Stamps. I'm going to be creating this card that you can see here with a very dramatic background. I'll show you how I'm going to make this today using the gorgeous Lovely Layers doves and the Lovely Layers seasonal frames. I love how these two sets coordinate together beautifully. The Lovely Layers doves, of course, creates the most beautiful dimensional doves. You will also receive a card that shows you how to assemble the doves once you have them all die cut together. There's also a code here that you can scan with your phone, and you can go ahead and see all of the inspiration that is available on the Honeybee website. The Lovely Layers seasonal frames, of course, are just so gorgeous. There's so many really interesting dies here to create some very cool details for any project, and I'm going to coordinate those with the doves. I'm also using the Holiday Wishes paper pad. I'm going to use this black paper that's in the upper left there. This is just a gorgeous paper pad. Honeybee's papers are so stunning. I think that they get better and better every release. Although every time I say they're my favorite, this is definitely going to be a new favorite for me. This is just so beautiful. I love it so much. The details, the attention to the color schemes. Honeybee has definitely just knocked it out of the park again with their paper pads this release. And so I am going to be using a really dramatic paper to coordinate with my project. Now this is a Lovely Layers candy canes, and I'm going to be using that spruce bough, and I'm also going to be using these thin foam squares to put my little doves together. Now I'm going to assemble them here, you can see, just with those thin squares, just to give them that little tiny bit of dimension. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add the beak and the eye, which I've die cut from a really soft gray. And I'm just using a little bit of liquid adhesive there to put these tiny little pieces onto the spots that I've already added some glue to. So here you can see how easy these are to assemble. It did not take me long to die cut the pieces. These are the tail feathers. There is a separate die for each of the two doves that die cuts the tail feathers. I'm going to just use a little bit of Lost Shadow Oxide ink and just go ahead and do a little bit of ink blending over top of those, and then I'll just adhere those into that tail feather section. And of course, the Lovely Layers dies always etch out or emboss the areas on, or deboss I should say, the areas on the cardstock where you can go ahead and do some paper piecing or add details with your markers or your colored pencils, whatever you like to do. But those embossed, or I should say debossed, lines on the die cut pieces just really make it super easy to go ahead and add any details that you wish to add. So I'm just going to finish off with that last tail feather there, and that's the finished little dove. Now again, I'm going to take a little bit of that Lost Shadow, and I'm going to just blend on a little bit of that ink onto a few of the different little areas on the edge of the dove, just to create that little bit of extra detail and dimension on the bird. I just think it looks really pretty and soft, and of course the Lost Shadow is just the most beautiful gray. It is ever so soft and light, and I just really love it. And so I'm just going to finish off my dove in that way. And that dove is going to be completed. I'll set that aside, and then I'll go ahead and do the same sorts of things to the second dove. I'm not going to use both of these doves on my project today. There only ended up being enough room on my card front for one dove. So that first dove that I assembled there, I will set that aside and use that on another project. But again, here you can just see that I'm taking my time and getting that little eye and the beak into place. And then I will assemble this dove in the same way that I did the last dove, just using those thin foam squares to add that tiny little bit of dimension. And then of course going in and adding those tail feathers that I have blended that Lost Shadow onto again to create that little bit of contrast with the white cardstock. So just using my tweezers and my craft pick here to help me get these into place. Of course, I did put a tiny little bit of liquid adhesive in that tail feather area before adding these little tail feathers in. I'll go in again with that Lost Shadow on this second dove and add just those little bits of the detail. And that's going to finish off this second dove. I love how these beautiful birds look. I think they are just such gorgeous die cuts. Really pretty. So now I'm going to go ahead with the other die cuts that I have cut out of white cardstock and add some color. So here you can just see I'm using some I'm trying to use some inks that will help me coordinate with my paper that I'm going to be using. So I'm starting off with some weathered wood, and then I'll go over top of that with some evergreen bough, and these are oxide inks. And so you can just see here, I've got that kind of greeny gray on the base of the spruce bough. And now I'm just going to go on over top with the evergreen bough, and it's just going to create this really perfect blend that coordinates beautifully with the foliage and the branches and so on that are on that patterned paper. And once I've got that ink blended onto those, I'll just set those aside and I'll continue doing the same thing for some of the other pieces. These white branches here that would be really great for holly berries, I have added just some evergreen bough to. And then I'm going in with gathered twigs for these other branches. These ones don't really look like they would have any foliage on them, so I've just kept them brown. I'm using up the gathered twigs on my brush, and then I'm going in with walnut stain around the edges for these pine cones. And I just die cut 2 pine cones. That's all I'm going to need for my project. And I'm going to use a little bit of Kitsch Flamingo for the berries that I've die cut out. And then I'm going to go in with a little bit of, and I believe this is Festive berries, and just use that on a little, sort of a little edge area of the berries. I don't want too much. I want a lot of that pink still showing here, so just a little bit of a shading of the Festive berries. And then those little berries will be all ready to embellish my area where I'm using the branches and the foliage and so on. Now I'm going to go ahead and assemble my card. I'm going to use my honeybee glue to adhere the card front onto my A2 top folding white card base. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that on. I did trim the pattern paper down slightly smaller than the card base so that I do have that white margin around the outer edge. I'll give that a really good press. And now I'm going to go ahead and add in these details. So this piece here that I die cut from the Lovely Layers seasonal frames, I've die cut it from a gray and a white, and I'm going to glue those together. And I'll go ahead and adhere that onto my card base. And now you can see that I'm just going to create kind of like this little, almost like a wreath at the top with all of those different foliage pieces in the pine cone. And then my sweet little dove is going to go just below that. And I did die cut the little tag and the bow from the Lovely Layers dove set, and the little pink tag there is going to have that little red ribbon attached to it. And then I'll go ahead and adhere that onto the back side of the dove in the area of the beak to make it look like it is in between the beak of the dove. So I'll just add a little bit of liquid adhesive to the back side of the head of the dove and adhere it there to make it look like it's in the beak. And you could stamp on that little tag definitely to create just that little bit of detail as well there. So now I've got that assembled. I'm ready to go ahead and stick down all of the foliage and bits that are going to be above that. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a lot of these pieces on just with liquid adhesive. And so there we have that base piece, and now I'm just going to go in with the branches and the other foliage and add those in as well. I love the contrast of these brown branches with some of the other tones of gray and green that I've used for ink blending the different little bits that are going to layer together here to create this really interesting kind of wreath above where our little sweet dove is going to be flying. So just add this on. I'm trying not to just layer everything right on top of each other. I'm trying to offset them slightly so that they do show up. And I'm just putting a little bit of liquid adhesive kind of on the tips of some of the pieces and leaving the ends free to just kind of be lifted up off of the paper a little bit. And then the pine cones I'm going to attach on with some dimensional adhesive here so that they are popped up. And then I'm just going to add the little berries here and there on the vines and the foliage. And I'm going to trim the spruce boughs apart and just add little sprigs of the spruce boughs around the other little bits of foliage and branches and so on that I have there. Again, just layering things as much as I can to give this a very dimensional and textured look. But I think my favorite thing about this project is that dramatic background. I really love the black in the background behind the different little berries and the spruce boughs and so on. And this little holly berry piece that I just attached there is actually from the Decorative Star Layering Frames die set. And now I'm going to use the Holiday Wishes pearls to just finish off that little holly piece that I did die cut from that Decorative Star Layering Frame die set. Now the sentiment I'm using is from the Let It Snow stamp set. That is the stamp set from the Holiday Wishes release that has all of the snowflakes. That is such a beautiful set, and it has the most gorgeous sentiments as well. So I've treated my black cardstock with some anti-static powder, and now I'm taking the Honeybee Clear embossing ink, and I'm going to just go ahead and stamp out that sentiment. I'll add a little bit of white embossing powder over top, and then this is just going to give a really, really pretty white sentiment on a black background that is really going to look nice with that dramatic black background paper that I've used for my card front. I'll just take my heat tool and heat this and melt it, and it's just going to create this really beautiful crisp sentiment. Now there is a coordinating die for that stamp set. The Let It Snow set does have a coordinating die set for all of the images that are on that set. And I just love this font and text. It's just absolutely stunning. So I'm going to pop my little dove up on some foam adhesive, and I'm going to adhere the sentiment with foam adhesive as well onto the project. And I also wanted to add a little bit of snow. So this is a snow product that I have in my collection. It's just a liquid product that dries really dimensional. And so I'm just adding this on to some of the holly leaves there and some of the spruce boughs. And I'll also add a little bit to the top of the dove in a few places as well. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of the Ranger Rock Candy over top of that. So I'm just going to finish adding that to a few areas here. And just like I said, I'm going to add it to the dove. I didn't want to put too much on the dove, just a little bit, because I think that the dove is in flight. I don't know how much snow it would actually have sitting on its wings, but I just thought I would add a little bit so that I could get a little bit of sparkle on the dove at least. So just a tiny bit there. And then, like I said, I've just taken the rock candy. I'll add a generous amount of that rock candy on top of that snow product, and I'll just set that aside to dry. Once that's dry, I will go ahead and start to assemble my card. Once I get that rock candy on there, of course, I will make sure to put the extra rock candy back into the container. And now that that's all dry, I'm going to assemble my card and add my little dove in this area here, just below that pretty little wreath that I added to the top. And now I'm going to just add a few white splatters to my project to finish it off. And that's going to complete my card today, friends. I hope you enjoyed this. I have linked up in the description box below to all of the different products that I've used for my project today. I absolutely love the Holiday Wishes collection. I think it is stunning. It is just absolutely perfect for creating so many different holiday projects. Please, friends, if you haven't already done so, give this video a thumbs up. And thank you so much, and I'll see you again another time. Bye-bye.